In this video, I'm going to talk a bit about how HubNut began. But first I need to try and rearrange that wire so it's not quite so dangling everywhere. Now going through the steering wheel probably isn't the best idea. There we go. Right, we'll start at the GSA and we'll get on our way. So the earliest form of HubNut was actually Classic Hub. It began as an online blog, just because in 2010 I went freelance, and when you're freelancing you've got to write the features you're asked to write by publishers, and it wasn't always about the cars I wanted to write about, which was rubbish ones for the most part. I do like dreadful cars, whereas the classic car magazines want you to write about MGBs and Triumph Stags and things like that, which, while nice cars, not really what I've ever been about. I mean, I wouldn't say no to a Stag, I mean, who would? But they're not my prime cup of tea. So the blog began just as a way for me to discuss what I was doing with my dreadful cars, what I was buying, doing collection capers, and it built up a small but loyal following of people. Very difficult to make headway in the world of blogging, and of course no income from it at all. I did briefly try setting up my own social media platform using the Classic Hub name, but it didn't really work out, and it was costing me money and I wasn't getting anything back, so I knocked that on the head probably early 2011. And then it all changed really when I test drove a Nissan Leaf. I'm not quite sure how I ended up approaching Nissan or why they said yes, but using my blog as the pretext, and the fact I was then a working motoring journalist, I said, can I have a Nissan Leaf to test please? And they said yes. And that was such a historic moment in my life that I thought, I really need to record this. I can take photos of the Nissan Leaf, but that's not going to get across what it's like to drive. I want to record my exploits in an electric car for the first time. So I set up a camera in the car. I think that's when I ended up buying my free sucker mount, because I had no other way of mounting a camera. And I did my little spiel, and you can still see that video. It is the oldest video on HubNut. And I did a few more videos, one about my Daihatsu Sirian, a Land Rover Discovery I owned at the time. Oh great, temporary traffic lights, and they're not working. That makes life extra exciting. We haven't got a red light, we've got no lights at all. But I'm behind a big chunky Volkswagen Transporter, and I think I'm just going to go for it. Now I better keep an eye on the road for a bit. But it was very... Oh, they're packing the roadworks away, that's what's going on, or setting up, so they haven't actually turned them on yet. That's always exciting, I find. Where was I? Yeah, so I was doing the blog, the videos, really very occasionally. It'd be one every few months, absolute tops. We'll just say thank you to this lorry driver for stopping there, that's very kind of him. A sign in his side of the road. Oh, it's a busy... Wales is still in lockdown, but as you can see the roads are quite busy at the moment. I'm justifying this as a work trip. I'm driving to my unit to get the 2CV out, because GSA is starting to cause me a few concerns, a few little niggles, which I'll get to in another video. But jumping back onto HubNut, I can't remember exactly when the name changed. I have a feeling it was about 6 years ago, and I just thought Classic Hub was tying me up too much. I did more stuff with electric cars. I tested a Tesla and Model S. Ooh, sticking your nose out there. That's why we pay attention, folks, even when we're recording videos. Blind Ben sticking his nose out the bend, the junction. Down south of Wales, lots of blind junctions like that, so you have to keep your wits about you, and that's why we do. But yeah, I was doing more of electric, Tesla Model S, Nissan ENV200, Volkswagen E-Up, Volkswagen E-Golf, and Classic Hub didn't seem the right name to use for that, so I changed the name to HubNut. It was just one of those moments of inspiration. I was probably battling with a HubNut on the car maybe, but that was where the name evolved to. It allowed me to link to Classic Hub, but it was a new name, Really catchy name. I'm sure a large part of the channel's success, and you want to bear this in mind if you're setting up a YouTube channel, is to be snappy and memorable. All the best car channel names tend to be. Mighty Car Mods, for instance, and others I can't think of. Aging Wheels. It's just short, snappy, easily remembered. Call yourself something too long-winded, people won't remember it. And I certainly suffer from that, where I'll watch a video and then I forgot who made the video. I want to watch it weeks later and can't remember. Let's pay attention at this roundabout. And then as the channel began to build, it was back when I had my Citroen XM. Someone, Andrew, you know who you are, suggested I monetize the channel. And he's like, you might make, 70, 80 quid a year, but it's still some income from your hobby. So I did. And but then that acts as a good motivator. And I this is a time when I was particularly short of money myself. The freelance market is so up and down. One change of editor and you've kind of had it. So I was very fortunate to have a channel that was bringing in some income, and it took a long time. I mean, I reckon it probably took 8 or 9 months to earn my first £60, because that's the minimum amount they'll pay you. And it's quite amusing to think how excited I was back then with that first paycheck, which felt like a paycheck for just doing my hobby. And then I was very fortunate to get an opportunity to edit a load of magazines, Retro Japanese, sadly now defunct, and Classic Jaguar, still very much alive, and Rolls-Royce and Bentley Driver, I did issue 1, and that's still going very strong as well. And very enjoyable, but there were various things that made me think this is not the future. It was really nice to be able to edit my own magazines, kind of what I'd been building up to in my time working in the classic motor media, so it was nice to get there, but it wasn't going to be the long-term solution for me. And as the channel kept on building, you start asking yourself, could I make this the full-time job? And what really drove that was the Invacar. The Invacar series went down really well, people loved it, views went up, subscriber count went through the roof, and I've not really looked back since. It was just over a year ago that I made the bold decision to go full-time on HubNut, and that's because personal reasons. I'd split up with my wife, Mrs. HubNut, and she still looks after the merchandise today. We're still good friends, but that happened and changed my outlook on life. Almost immediately, I was like, I want to go to New Zealand. I want to have massive adventures. So I did the Croatia trip in the 2CV. I then went to New Zealand, Australia, and did all that, and we're still seeing the videos coming through from that trip. I was very lucky to be able to build up such a backlog before lockdown, and that very much changed my outlook on life. And I was like, well, I'm going to go for it. And I managed to set up a commercial deal with Lancaster Insurance. And so they were sponsoring the channel in those early days, which helped because the income per month was not enough to support myself. But with the Lancaster deal, I could. It wasn't a massive amount of income, but it was enough. I could actually live on it. And things have built up since then, but the Lancaster deal came to kind of a natural end before I went travelling. That wasn't really their bag. They weren't that keen to cover those sorts of exploits. It wasn't really targeting their demographic in quite the same way. And I didn't really want to carry the deal with me going around the world. I just wanted to simplify everything. So that came to an end in, what was it, June, July last year, and I'm still very grateful to them for enabling me to make that jump. Since then, the ad revenue, the merchandise sales mean that I can live on the income. It's still not a huge income. YouTubers generally are not wealthy fellows. Perhaps the likes of Cletus McFarland are, but he's a very shrewd businessman and has over 2 million subscribers. I'm not in that league. Most of us YouTubers are not in that league. So very much scratching for an income, really. And I'm very grateful that it's comfortable for my fairly low expenditure lifestyle. I say fairly low, but I did go to the other side of the world. But even then I managed to keep the costs on that trip relatively low by doing Airbnb and not eating out every night, because that certainly eats up money. So I was doing a lot of home cooking, by which I mean ready meals. There's some very nice ones in New Zealand, and that was that. And yeah, that's kind of where we are today. But HubNut is now my income. It's great. I can't say how great it feels, really, even though I just did. But yeah, and it all stems from me talking to a camera, something I didn't think I'd ever be comfortable with. And yeah, it's ended up going really, really well. That is the I mean, you can plot and plan as much as you like, but at the end of the day, to be successful on YouTube, the two basics are you must be able to talk to a camera, and people must like what you say and do. And I can't control that second bit. I'm very fortunate that the stuff I come out with seems to find a ready audience. You can't really plan for that. Although, you know, it's always worth watching other YouTubers and seeing what they do, especially the popular ones. I'm just going for another section of roadworks. So the actual making of the videos, just to give you some idea, I never script ever, so everything is off the top of my head. I mean, naturally, I'll move pigeons. I will do some planning. I will do my research the night before. Although, no matter how good your research is, you will always get facts wrong, and that was an annoyance when you're writing features. It's an annoyance when you're speaking out loud. If anything, it's even worse, because you can't edit a video once it's gone live, whereas a magazine feature exists for a bit and then people forget about it and move on. Which is another thing that drove me into video, because, you know, I've put so much effort into these magazine features, and a month down the line they're history, and it just made me feel a bit sad, really. Whereas now people can go through my back catalogue, and they have been. I see comments coming up on older videos when I had long hair, and it's really nice to still get that engagement with something I crafted years ago. Sorry, twisty, having to pay attention. And also dappled light, that makes life interesting. I don't know what it's doing for the light levels in the car. It's probably struggling a bit, for which I apologise. But people have been asking for this vlog, and here I am recording it. But yeah, more often than not, it is just a case of me turning on the camera and speaking. And I know I go a lot. That's because my brain is trying to think ahead. My brain really works at the speed of my fingers, so that's why writing works so well for me. But obviously speaking, you have to process that much more quickly, and it is something I think I've got better at, looking back to early videos. And of course, I'm not just thinking about what I need to say, I'm thinking about camera angles. I'm checking to make sure this thing's flashing and is actually recording. I'm checking the microphone connections to make sure that's actually connected. And generally you're constantly thinking about what the camera can see, trying to work out what that scene is that will eventually end up in the edit suite. So it's a very complicated business, but for me a very enjoyable one. I don't actually like editing all that much. That's not something you can probably tell by my videos, but I put a great deal of care and effort into. I try and get the editing done in under an hour on a video typically, and I don't do anything clever. It's just presenting the clips in a slightly cleaner format than if they were completely raw. Trying to get rid of awkward pauses, might get rid of stumbles where I've started speaking and it's gone wrong. But that's about as bad as my bloopers get, really. Anything else just makes the cut regardless. Because this isn't television, I don't have to take quite the same level of care. I can be a bit more free form, shall we say. But there you go, that was just me prattling on about how HubNut became what it is. I'm very grateful to all those who've allowed it to happen. and some of you have been watching for many years now, so thank you. And thank you for comments, feedback. It is useful. I know we've had some videos with sound issues recently, I think because I'm recording them on the laptop directly. Maybe I actually do need to record those on a camera. I'll sort something out, I'm sure. But yeah, as ever, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Farewell.